Welcome to video 2 of the GotoWebinar software from Citrix Online. In this video, we're going to look at content and interaction. I'm going to go to the Manage Webinar screen here. I can access my webinar before a meeting to practice a presentation, and then I can also start the webinar from this screen. It takes about 10 seconds on my system to enter GoToWebinar. Soon you're going to hear the GoToWebinar automated system start up.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy. Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast.
Okay, so that beep that you hear is practice mode beep. I just wanted to quickly go over some webinar terminology. GoToWebinar separates out staff from attendees. So just really quickly, an organizer like I am has a GoToWebinar account, and we can schedule, start, manage, and end sessions. And an organizer can also designate other people, so I can promote attendees to be panelists, presenters, or organizers. Now, a panelist presents and answers questions assigned to them. They don't need to have a GoToWebinar account, but they can't promote attendees. A presenter is just the person who's presenting their screen to the audience. Now, an attendee is someone who can view the presenter's screen. Attendees don't need GoToWebinar accounts, and they can be unmuted so they can speak during the session. We can have up to 25 people unmuted and speaking on the call at one time. But I'm going to go ahead and start the broadcast.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, so Susie's now joined us, and because I'm an organizer, I was able to unmute her mic. But at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to promote Susie. So when I right-click on Susie's name, I have a number of options to make a presenter, make panelist, or make organizer. I'm going to go ahead and make Susie an organizer because that means that she'll be able to share her webcam and other things with us. And what we see is that Susie's name is moved right into the staff window.
So this process only takes a couple of minutes. I make myself, Susie Wigranoski, presenter. I'm clicking yes, and that enables me now to access the rest of my buttons, and I'll be able to share my screen with you.
Great, and as you did that, I received an information button from GoToWebinar telling me that I'm no longer the presenter.
Now I've shared my screen, and I'll just open up my webcam. I think we have a very strong connection this evening, so we should be able to share our information without too much of a time delay.
Okay.
And how is that for you, Laura?
Well, that's good.
Okay, so Laura has just turned over the controls to myself, and I'm now the organizer. There was a short process of once I had that power to actually promote myself to a presenter. And with those roles, I'm now able to access the full complement of tools. And it should be noted, depending on your role within the GoToWebinar, you may have more or less tools. But the first pane that we're going to look at on this entire control panel is the data sharing option, which basically enables me to share my screen. There's a couple buttons here. Looks like a play button and a stop button. That's just enabling the sharing to happen. To the right of that, give keyboard and mouse away. I'm able to give that power to anybody within the presentation, including attendees. And this final button, as we move along in the pane, change presenter, that allows me to give power over to somebody else. And as you can see just below that pane, we have the ability to start our recording. The recording aspect was something that we found to be a valuable criteria when looking at the different video conferencing possibilities that were available. Okay, and you'll notice as I move down this toolbar, we have several small panes, and they can be expanded or collapsed. So the second pane that I'm going to open is the dashboard pane. And here we can see some of the statistics that are happening during this webinar, including the time that has elapsed, the number of attendees that are in attendance. It also indicates to us whether the attendees that are here are being attentive, and the feedback on that is whether or not they have the current view in front of them. So that's a nice bit of information for employers or somebody monitoring the progress of their employees' training. It also indicates whether there are questions or hands raised within the crowd. So I get a lot of feedback or interactive ability here. Just moving down slightly, we have third pane that talks about the audience view. Audience view doesn't show up to you because you don't have the same level of authorization right now. But what it's showing me is how many attendees are present, again, what is being shared. And it also talks about, in this section, the options of connection. So people can be attending this conference via telephone or via the computer. Okay, so I've just opened another pane, and this one gives me more information about the webcams that are currently operational. So this has allowed me to, or will allow me to stop or share my webcam. I also have another drop-down menu labeled webcams that again lets me stop sharing. It allows me to hide and also change the position of where the webcam images are located on the page. So the various top, left, bottom. Directly underneath that pane is one that it allows me to present polls to the various participants or attendees. These are Laura's polls. This is another thing that we found very valuable when setting up criteria to look at the different video conferencing systems. What kind of capability did we have to elicit information from participants? Okay, so this is a yes/no answer. Do you have a vegetable garden? And I'm an avid gardener, so I'm going to say yes. Okay, thank you, Laura. So that's good to know you had that capability still to launch. Okay, so the poll is now open, it says.
Yes, but you know what?
Yes.
Organizers and panelists don't vote.
But for the purpose of discussion, what this has presented, we launched the poll, and it presented Laura's first question, and the results would have been presented back to us and also to the attendees in a percentage form. And when you actually go into the polls to set these up, you have the ability to designate what your question is and then enter multiple choice questions. And of course, we could get that data from our students, and it really adds to the interactivity of what's going on. And those poll questions can be set up in advance, or I could do it on the fly as well. Or a partner working with me that was controlling this panel saw that we needed to ask for some information, or there was something particularly building within the seminar, we could then get information back from the attendees.
Yeah, and that was interesting because even though you're the presenter, I could still launch the poll.
And I think that's valuable because we've talked already about how time-consuming and attention-consuming the actual presentation part of these conferences are. So having the secondary person to watch the other aspects of the control panel, such as whether questions are coming in and watching the chat function and so on, is really important. I think especially when you have larger number of attendees, to really have that personalized feeling, so comments aren't appearing in the chat box and not being addressed by the presenter.
Mm-hmm.
So directly under polls, we have another pane called questions. And this is a really excellent area, again, to have interactivity between the attendees and the presenters. Anyone can type a question into the bar directly under the captioned questions. And then they have the ability also to designate if they're going to send that privately or whether they want everyone within the conference to see it. So they'll just click one of those buttons in order to do that. Okay, and closely related to that, if we just go down to the pane right below, is the chat pane. And this is another place where questions can be answered or general commentary. Quite often in webinars, the commentary that's going on between the various participants or attendees is enlightening as what's being presented.
Since Susie and I recorded this video, we found out that actually attendees don't have access to the chat. It's only presenters and organizers. We'd made ourselves presenters and organizers and not tested this. Attendees can, however, type in questions. This view shows an attendee's view of the conference.
So to convince you that I am indeed sharing something else, I'll bring up a picture that I selected a little bit earlier of one of the really beautiful natural places that are around here. This is at the Twin Falls, just outside of Hay River, Northwest Territories. Okay, so I do have the ability then to take you around and show you various things on my computer.
Oh, I know one thing we haven't discussed yet, Susie, and that's whiteboards and breakout rooms. Some webinar softwares allow you to segregate people into different rooms so that they can do a group work.
I have looked for it. I can't say definitively that it doesn't exist, but if it does, it's not readily accessible or readily visible. The whiteboard capability as compared to other video conferencing, I haven't seen the ability to have multiple whiteboards, kind of preloaded with information and able to access back and forth. That's something I haven't seen here.
Right. I know that one thing our individual group did instead of a whiteboard is we had a shared Google Doc open so that we were all in the same Google Doc, and that seemed to serve the same function as a whiteboard, at least with respect to text, not necessarily with respect to drawing though. YouTube videos will not tend to share very well.
Provide those types of links prior to the presentation and have them prepared, having already watched them when they come into attendance.
Oh, that's a brilliant idea. Have a great night, Susie.
Okay, this was fun. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I'm going to end the webinar here.
This concludes video 2 of GoToWebinar. Video 3 contains reporting features in GoToWebinar. We look forward to seeing you in some of our other videos.